that there is much else above, around. He has seen the universe around, but he also glimpses that there are realms and dominions above. And he cuts off the cord of the physical holding him to the earth, and he soars in spirit above to the worlds that are above. And there, when he is traveling to the other worlds, he climbed to meet the infinite more above. The immobile ocean silence saw him pass, an arrow leaping through eternity, suddenly shot from the tense bow of time, a ray returning to its parent sun. After all, each one of us is a ray of God, returning or in the process of returning to our parent sun. But there is always an opponent. There is always something that opposes our return, even for Ashwapati. Opponent of that glory of escape, the black inconscient swung its dragon tail, lashing a slumberous infinite by its force into the deep obscurities of form. From the inconscient parts, there is a lashing, trying to bring him back to the earth, back to matter. But he has that intensity, and he goes. And across the unfolding of the seas of self appeared the deathless countries of the One. Sunbelts of knowledge, moonbelts of delight, beyond, stretched out in an ecstasy of wideness, beyond our indigent corporeal range, our narrow physical range. There he could enter, there a while abide, a voyager upon uncharted routes, fronting the viewless danger of the unknown, adventuring across enormous realms. He broke into another space and time. Space and time, each plane of being, each plane of existence has its own space, has its own time. If there are 7 planes of existence, there are as many times, as many planes. Our earthly time and earthly space is relevant only to the earth. Just there is another time and another space. You sleep, you dream, you feel as if long time has elapsed, 1 year has elapsed, and you have gone, and you have flown, you have traveled, so many things you do. You wake up and see only it is 5 minutes, and you are there in the physical place. But on the dream level, you have worked and moved in another dimension of time, another dimension of space. So thus Ashwapati, the king, goes into another space and time. And what does he see? He sees there a whole world pile. Once he goes across the earth zone, he sees a world pile, erect like the chariot, erect like a mountain, chariot to the gods, motionless under an inscrutable sky, as if from matter's plinth, as if matter is the plinth, and viewless base to a top as viewless, a carved sea of worlds, climbing to the supreme. And he is interested. He wants to discover, he wants to find out what these worlds contain. What is the texture, what is the life in these worlds? and he enters into a realm where there is perfect beauty, perfect harmony, a world of ideals. Every movement that man has thought of, everything that man has wanted to do, it is there achieved. In fact, that is the world of prototypes. That is, anything that is to be worked out on earth is first formed by the gods of the cosmos on this subtle plane. That is the world of the subtle physical. Immediately beyond the physical world, there is a subtle physical world. That is where he sees perfect beauty, symmetry, right patterns, a world of harmonies. And everything that takes place is there in its perfect form. But he finds, after scrutinizing everything, that it is like a perfect picture in a perfect frame. There is no movement, there is no progress. Everything is set to type, and a perfect picture in a perfect frame. This fairy artistry could not keep his will. Only a moment's fine release it gave. A careless hour was spent in a slight bliss. His destiny lay beyond in larger space. And he goes further to the next world, beyond the subtle physical world. He steps into the world of life, where there is only a life force. Now, we must understand clearly, each plane of existence has its own law and principle. Here on this physical, in this physical world, it is a law of matter that prevails. That is the basic principle. In the life world, the life force is the basic thing. Everything else is subordinate to it. Life is supreme. Similarly, in the mental world, the mind is supreme. Ideas, thoughts, concepts, they move with great abandon and speed. There is not this physical obstruction to slow them. That is a world. So each world has a truth principle on which it is based. So this king now enters into the life world. Now this life world also has several grades, has several levels. The lowest level, when he enters into the world of life, he finds all these little beings and elementals, gnomes, dwarfs, genii, all these are busy there playing about, causing all the confusion and things on earth and enjoying them. Most of our accidents, confused movements, take place because they are impelled from above by these what are called elementals, spirits, who precipitate those things and enjoy themselves. So when Ashwapati enters into this realm, he sees a strange pell-mell of magic artisans was seen moulding the plastic clay of life. An elfin brood, an elemental kind, astonished by the unaccustomed glow, because when this king goes, he carries a certain light with him. They are not used to light. They function in a semi-darkness. Imps with dry limbs and carved beast visages, sprite prompters, goblin visioned or fairy small, and genii fairer but unsouled and poor, and fallen beings their heavenly portion lost, and errant divinities trapped in time's dust, ignorant and dangerous wills, but armed with power, half animal, half god their mood, their shape. They are the denizens of the lower life world, causing in moving man here to fulfill their intentions. And how do they get entry into this human world? How do they find people in whom they can enter or whom they can influence and work? He says, all by their influence is enacted here. Not there alone is their empire or their role. Wherever are soulless minds and guideless lives, and in a small body self is all that counts. Wherever love and light and largeness lack, these crooked fashioners take up their task. To all half-conscious worlds they extend their reign. That is, where love is lacking, where light is lacking, where largeness is lacking, where there is narrowness, where things are limited, where there is no consciousness, where people are half-conscious or vaguely conscious, there is the right atmosphere for these mischievous beings to exert their influence, to project their ideas and minds and cause havoc. He sees all this and he finds the truth of life is not here. He has to go further on. He watches all that they do, and then it is a world of chaos, not a world of patterns as the earlier world was. Adventuring once more in the natal mist, across the dangerous haze, he through the astral chaos shore a way, mid the grey faces of its demon gods. They are demon gods, not real gods. And he goes into the larger realms of life, where life is not that constricted, where the denizens of the world are not these small beings, but large beings. There is a larger life world where originate all the impulsions of heroic, courageous, noble movements on earth, where also mighty deeds, mighty ambitions are originated. They are the life beings, the life gods, who are responsible for great movements of construction as also great moments of destruction. And it is there that he enters. This realm inspires us with our vaster hopes. Its forces have made landings on our globe. Its signs have stamped their patterns on our lives. It lends a sovereign movement to our fate. Its errant waves motive our life's high surge. And he admires this world and sees the waves of life rising high and high towards the summits of the spirit. There is no limit. The waves of life force rise to the heights of the spirit. But at a certain stage, they fall back. Now Ashwapati is wondering why it is that life should not always go on rising, expanding. Why does it have to come back? What is the reason for this failure of life? He tries to find a spot, the reason for this arrestation of life. And then he comes across to a dark spot, and he decides to enter into that pit of darkness, into this world of life, to find out where is this origin of deformation, this origin of the limitation of life movement. And a peril haunted now the common air. As he enters, the world grew full of menacing energies. Appalling footsteps drew invisibly near. Shapes that were threats invaded the dream light, and ominous beings passed him on the road, whose very gaze was a calamity. There are beings whose very gaze is a calamity. We don't need to go to the vital world. We see some of them in our lives on earth also. And he passes through them. And as he goes into this world of darkness, this pit of night, there is a false air of hope, an air of prophecy felt, a heavenly hope. Listened for a gospel, watched for a new star. The find was visible, but cloaked in light. The devil cloaks himself in light. He seemed a helping angel from the skies. He armed untruth with the scripture and the law. He deceived with wisdom. With virtue slew the soul, and led to perdition by the heavenward path. This is the mischief of the adversary. He misleads, putting on the cloak of light, quoting the scripture, attracting, deceiving by the light. There are lights and lights. There are halos and halos. But man doesn't have that discrimination. And that is why how the adversary has been thriving. Now in this world of darkness, this king sees the enemy of light. And further, as he goes, he saw a city of ancient ignorance, founded upon a soil that knew not light. There, each in his own darkness walked alone. Only they agreed to differ in evil's paths, to live in their own way for their own selves, or to enforce a common lie and wrong. There ego was lord upon his peacock seat, and falsehood sat by him, his mate and queen. The world turned to them as heaven to truth and God. This is the acme of the depravity of the world of darkness, where just as in heaven you turn to earth and God, the world turns to ego and falsehood. And that also he passes. And as he goes, a greater darkness waited, a worse reigned, if worse can be, where all is evil's extreme. Yet to the cloaked, the uncloaked is naked worst. There God and truth and supernal light had never been, or else had power no more. In that country he enters, and all vanished suddenly, like a thought expunged. His spirit became an empty listening gulf, void of the dead illusion of a world. Nothing was left, not even an evil face. He was alone with the grey python night. Even evil beings can't live here. It is so dark. But he carries the soul which none can defeat. And to the blank horror a calm light replied, immutable, undying, unborn. Mighty and mute the Godhead in him awoke, and faced the pain and danger of the world. He mastered the tides of nature with a look. He met with his bare spirit naked hell. Because of his spiritual power, the intensity of purity, he could face this dark night, and he could see there the hidden heart of night. And the poet describes, there suffering was nature's daily food, alluring to the anguished heart and flesh, and torture was the formula of delight. People could get delight only out of torture. Things were so perverted, so much topsy-turvy. Pain mimicked the celestial ecstasy. There, good, a faithless gardener of God, watered with virtue the world's upas tree, the bitter tree, and careful of the outward word and act, engrafted his hypocrite blooms on native ill. Hypocrisy thrives in this world of darkness. All high things served their nether opposite. Good things, high things, insofar as they survived, were turned to evil ends. The forms of gods sustained a demon cult. Heaven's face became a mask and snare of hell. He sees the evil at its worst, and around him grew the terror of a world of agony followed by worse agony, and in the terror a great wicked joy, glad of one's own and others' calamity. Everybody was glad, not only of others' calamities, but of one's own calamity also. That was the perversion of falsehood. And as he proceeds further, there is a streak of light. Like a tunnel, he comes out of the darkness. He has seen the origin of evil. He has seen the acme of blindness and darkness. And as he comes out, he sees the paradise of life gods, the shining Edens, where there is joy. The shining Edens of the vital gods received him in their deathless harmonies. All things were perfect there, that flower in time. Beauty was there, creation's native mold. Peace was a thrilled, voluptuous purity. That was peace. He comes to this world and experiences the bliss of pure life energy. A giant drop of the bliss unknowable overwhelmed his limbs, and round his soul became a fiery ocean of felicity. He foundered, drowned in sweet and burning vasts, the dire delight that could shatter mortal flesh. There is a bliss that the mortal trained, purified, subjected to certain intensification of consciousness before it can receive and hold the delight of God. That is why they say an unbaked jar will split when the nectar is poured into it. The human system has to be subjected to a deliberate process of purification and built with strong nerves which will not spill, which will not shake, but remain steady. A million faces wears her knowledge here, and every face is turbaned with a doubt. Our mental knowledge is such that every statement, every conclusion is turbaned with a doubt. What we believe today, we question tomorrow, and day after tomorrow dismiss it as false. There is no finality to our mental knowledge. He sees that mind as it functions in its primitive beginnings is narrow, unsure, and passes next to the world of the greater minds, where ideas, concepts, they rule in their largeness. Still, they cannot reach up to the truth. There is a level where the mind has to stop. But still, the mind, the higher mind, goes as far as it could. Thereafter, he enters into a realm of the self of mind. The whole mental dominion, there is a self. And when you touch that self on the frontiers of mind, when you silence your mind, make it quiet, quieten the emotions and feelings, after that practice, you arrive at a frontier of the mind, what are called the gates of the transcendent, where you break into another sphere. There is no movement. Everything is at standstill. The entire movement of world looks like a shadow, and only the self looks real. Now this is an experience which is so overwhelming that many seers and mystics have taken it to be the ultimate truth, non-existence, a zero. That's the truth. The world is a seeming truth. So they have erected philosophies of thought that the world is an illusion, that the world is like a passing show. The truth is that the self, which is not involved, which is never moving, which is still. And it is people who have got something of this experience, who deny anything positive in this world, who think that the entire truth is in the silence, in what they called deconditioned mind. They think that thought process, cognitive process, cogitations, ratiocinations, they are all conditioning of the mind. Stop that process and you have the truth. A Zen master will come and he will shock your mind in some unexpected way, and when the mind is stunned, the process of the mind stops and you feel in a blank. You feel absolutely a kind of zero. They say that's the reality. Now this is a truth, but a partial truth, not the ultimate truth. It is a beginning of a new realm, where the old ceases and the new begins. The cup has to be emptied before it can be filled anew. And when the human mind arrives at this frontier of consciousness, where it has to exceed itself, there is this zone of blankness, nirvana. But that is not the ultimate truth, because beyond that are the kingdoms of the divine glory, of knowledge, power, bliss. All these splendors of the divine, they come once the being is ready and founded in a solid peace, because otherwise the being can't bear it. Now here, he says, he came alone with an enormous self of mind, which held all life in a corner of its vasts, omnipotent, immobile, and aloof. In the world which sprang from it, it took no part. It gave no heed to the pains of victory. It was indifferent to its own defeats. It heard the cry of grief and made no sign. Impartial fell its gaze on evil and good. It saw destruction come and did not move. It was indifferent. It was aloof. Now this country of the self of the mind is a destination where everyone who seeks the upward route towards the divine consciousness arrives at some stage or other. And Ashwapati waits for that thing to settle, and then he arrives at a place where there is the soul of the world. Now the world soul is involved in the world movement. There is a soul which is one, holding and supporting the entire world movement. And there he hears this summoning voice of one long known and loved. There is a familiar, a hidden call to unforeseen delight. And there Sri Aurobindo describes the different forms in which he hears this celestial sound. Now, this passage describes also the various sounds which a person who does yoga may hear. When you meditate, when you go deep, you may hear certain sounds which are not physical sounds. There are sounds that are recognized in the yogic tradition, 8 or 9 of them. And those sounds he has incorporated here. He says, the immortal cry ravished the captive ear. Then, lowering its imperious mystery, it sank to a whisper circling round the soul. It seemed the yearning of a lonely flute that roamed along the shores of memory and filled the eyes with tears of a longing joy. You hear the notes of flute. The flute notes, are sounded by Krishna, the Lord of delight. God calling the human souls to its rendezvous with the divine. He is the shepherd. He is the cowherd. The cows are the human souls. He calls them. He wanders on the shores of a river. Here he describes on the shores of memory. And it is a summons, it is a call, the celestial call to human souls to wake up and come. That is why The lonely flute, it has certain vibrations which are unearthly, which are heavenly for those who are sensitive. The call of the flute is always the character and the quality of the call of the Lord, the captain of our journey. That is one. The flute. A cricket's rash and a fiery single note, it marked with shrill melody night's moonless hush, and bet upon a nerve of mystic sleep its high, insistent, magical revie. That is the cricket. It goes on, periodically sounding. That also is a yogic sound which you hear. There may not be any cricket outside, but you hear. Or a jingling silver laugh of anklet bells travel the roads of a solitary heart. That is a bullock cart, a car drawn by bullock. It walks in the forest. And in India, they tie certain bells to the neck. And as they go, the bells go on jingling. Now in yoga also, you hear the sound of bells. That is another type. Its dance solaced an eternal loneliness. Or from a far harmonious distance heard the tinkling pace of a long caravan, a long procession of carts. There is a rumbling sound. You hear that in your concentration. It seemed at times, or a vast forest's hymn, as if a whole forest is singing a hymn. That rising crescendo of a hymn you hear. Or the solemn reminder of a temple gong. The gong, that also is a sound which you may hear. Or a bee croon, honey drunk in summer isles, like the crooning of the bees. That also you hear in yoga. Ardent with ecstasy in a slumberous noon, or the far anthem of a pilgrim sea. The waves of the ocean, that sound you hear. So these are certain authenticated yoga sounds that one hears, not necessarily all the sounds. Sometime or other, when we meditate, we hear either this or that. When we arrive at a particular border of consciousness, it may be any of these. And he describes, these are the sounds in which, in the world of the self of mind, the king hears the voice and the silent soul of all the world was there. A being lived, a presence and a power, a single person who was himself and all. The divine being who is there, the center, he is not only the center, but he is also the all. And cherished nature's sweet and dangerous throbs, transfigured into beats divine and pure. Every human experience, every world experience is transmitted there at that level into divine beats, pure and celestial. And in that world, body was not there. It is a world of the self. For bodies were needed not. The soul itself was its own deathless form, and met at once the touch of other souls. One doesn't need a body to receive the touches of others in that world. The soul itself functions, self-bodied. And in that world of the self, is also where beings, when they die, their souls repair. After the human soul sheds its physical body, after it completes its transit through the intervening planes, worlds of subtle physical life, mind, sheds its sheaths, the subtle sheath, the vital sheath, the mental sheath. After these things are worked out and shed, the soul goes to what is called the psychic world, the world of peace, the world of sleep. It is there that all these souls rest, and in that sleep, which is a conscious sleep, they assimilate the past experience of lives and, helped by the angels of the world, prepare for the next birth. And he says, the beings that once wore forms on earth sat there in shining chambers of spiritual sleep. Past were the pillar posts of birth and death. Past was the little scene of symbol deeds. Past were the heavens and hells of the long road. Each man creates his own hell and own heaven. So the soul has to pass through its self-created heaven, self-created hell, before it is freed to enter into this world of rest. They had returned into the world's deep soul. All now was gathered into pregnant rest. Person and nature suffered a slumber change. In trance, they gathered back their bygone selves. In the background, memories foreseeing muse, prophetic of new personality, arranged the map of their coming destiny's course. It is there in that world and poise of rest that they arrange the map of their next destiny. Heirs of the past, their future's discoverers, electors of their own self-chosen lot, they waited for the adventure of new life. Them all those he sees, how they are preparing themselves for their next incarnation. And his soul passed on, a single conscious power, towards the end which ever begins again. There is no end. There is no beginning. It is an endless moment. Approaching through a stillness dumb and calm to the source of all things human and divine. He goes to that source. There he beheld in their mighty union's poise the figure of the deathless two-in-one. In the Indian mythology, a great spiritual truth is presented in the figure, imagery, of two bodies, male and female in one body. That is, that God is half female and half male, symbolizing that for every creation there has to be two. Without creation, without manifestation, it is one. When it moves into manifestation, it renders itself into two. The dynamic and the static, the sanctioning and the executive, what you call in modern scientific language, the positive and the negative. Now these two in archetypal two-in-one, he sees the original figure, a single being in two bodies clasped, a diarchy of two united souls, seated, absorbed in deep creative joy. Their trance of bliss sustained the mobile world. But the two-in-one are not the ultimate truth. Behind them in a morning dusk one stood, who brought them forth from the unknowable. Ever disguised, she awaits the seeking spirit, the Divine Mother, Creatrix. She is there, behind the two-in-one, watcher on the supreme unreachable peaks, guide of the traveler of the unseen paths. She guards the austere approach to the alone. And she is there above the gods. Above them all she stands supporting all, the sole omnipotent goddess ever veiled, of whom the world is the inscrutable mask. The ages are the footfalls of her tread, their happenings the figures of her thoughts, and all creation is her endless act. He saw the mystic outline of a face. He can't see that, decipher that figure clearly. He saw the mystic outline of a face, overwhelmed by her implacable light and bliss, an atom of her illimitable self, mastered by the honey and lightning of her power, tossed over the shores of her ocean ecstasy, drunk with the deep golden spiritual wine. He cast from the rent stillness of his soul a cry of adoration and desire, and the surrender of his boundless mind. He fell down at her feet, unconscious, prone, so much overwhelmed by that experience. He falls down unconscious, prone. A stillness absolute, incommunicable, meets the sheer self-discovery of the soul. A wall of stillness shuts it from the world. A gulf of stillness swallows up the sense and makes unreal all that mind has known, all that the laboring senses still would weave, prolonging an imaged unreality. Self's vast spiritual silence occupies space. Only the inconceivable is left. Only the nameless without space and time. Abolished is the burdening need of life. Thought falls from us. We cease from joy and grief. The ego is dead. We are free from being and care. We have done with birth and death and work and fate. O soul, it is too early to rejoice. Thou hast reached the boundless silence of the self. Thou hast leaped into a glad, divine abyss. But where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power? On what dead bank on the eternal's road. One was within thee who was self and world. What hast thou done for his purpose in the stars? Escape brings not the victory and the crown. Something thou camest to do from the unknown, but nothing is finished and the world goes on, because only half God's cosmic work is done. Only the everlasting No has neared and stared into thy eyes and killed thy heart. But where is the lover's everlasting yes and immortality in the secret heart? The voice that chants to the Creator fire, the symboled Om, the great assenting word, the bridge between the rapture and the calm, the passion and the beauty of the bride, the chamber where the glorious enemies kiss, the smile that saves, the golden peak of things. This too is truth at the mystic fount of life. A black veil has been lifted. We have seen the mighty shadow of the omniscient Lord. But who has lifted up the veil of light? And who has seen the body of the King? The mystery of God's birth and acts remains, leaving unbroken the last chapter's seal. Unsolved the riddle of the unfinished play. The cosmic player laughs within his mask, and still the last inviolate secret hides behind the human glory of a form, behind the gold eidolon of a name. This was the case with the king. He had achieved a certain extinction of ego, of desirelessness. He had achieved a certain barren spiritual victory. But that wouldn't satisfy the soul, because only half the God's work is done when we are liberated. Much has to follow after one is liberated. One has to fulfill the intention of God. So Ashwapati, the king, yearns, and even while he stood on being's naked edge, and all the passion and seeking of his soul faced their extinction, in some featureless vast, the presence he yearned for suddenly drew close. The divinity, on seeing whom he had fallen unconscious, that presence draws near. The formless and the formed were joined in her. It is neither form nor formless. Both were joined. Immensity was exceeded by a look. A face revealed the crowded infinite. She is the golden bridge, the wonderful fire. The luminous heart of the unknown is she, a power of silence in the depths of God. She is the force, the inevitable word, the magnet of our difficult ascent. the sun from which we kindle all our suns, the light that leans from the unrealized vasts, the might of all that never yet came down. All nature dumbly calls to her alone, to heal with her feet the aching throb of life, and break the seals on the dim soul of man, and kindle her fire in the closed heart of things. All here shall be one day her sweetness home. All contraries prepare her harmony. Towards her our knowledge climbs, our passion grows. In her miraculous rapture we shall dwell. Her clasp will turn to ecstasy, our pain. Our self shall be one self with all through her. That is the presence. That is the divine form that came near her. When he saw that, he yearned to call her forever down, her healing touch of love and truth and joy, into the darkness of the suffering world. The king remembers the suffering world from where he has ascended. And this glory and this might he seeks and he yearns to call down into the suffering world for humanity. His soul was freed and given to her alone. His aspiration is not for himself, but for the world. He is not content to have to realize her for himself, but he seeks that she should come down. But she appears, she talks, she speaks to him that everything has to be left to time, that truth brought down too soon might break the earth. Leave it to nature, leave it to the will. In course of time everything will be fulfilled. She tells him, let not the impatient titan drive thy heart. Ask not the imperfect fruit, the partial prize. Only one boon to greaten thy spirit demand. Only one joy to raise thy kind desire. Above blind fate and the antagonist powers, moveless there stands a high unchanging will. To its omnipotence leave thy work's result. All things shall change in God's transfiguring hour. August and sweet sank hushed that mighty voice, but Ashwapati's heart replied to her. A cry amid the silence of the vasts. How shall I rest content with mortal days and the dull measure of terrestrial things? I who have seen behind the cosmic mask the glory and the beauty of thy face. Hard is the doom to which thou bindest thy sons. How long shall our spirits battle with the night and bear defeat and the brute yoke of death? We who are vessels of a deathless force and builders of the Godhead of the race. Or if it is thy work I do below, amid the error and waste of human life, in the vague light of man's half-conscious mind, why breaks not in some distant gleam of thee? Where in the greyness is thy coming ray? Where is the thunder of thy victory's wings? Only we hear the feet of passing gods. And he goes on pleading. asking her. His prayers sank down in the resisting night, oppressed by the thousand forces that deny. But there arose a wide consenting voice. The spirit of beauty was revealed in sound. Light floated round the marvelous vision's brow, and on her lips the immortal's joy took shape. O strong forerunner, I have heard thy cry. One shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power. A limitless mind that can contain the world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved by the passions of the gods shall come. All mights and greatnesses shall join in her. Beauty shall walk celestial on the earth, and in her body, as on his homing, delight shall sleep in the cloud net of her hair, and in her body, as on his homing tree, immortal love shall beat his glorious wings. A music of graceless things shall weave her charm. The streams of heaven shall murmur in her laugh. Her lips shall be the honeycombs of God. Her limbs is golden jars of ecstasy. Her breasts the rapture flowers of paradise. She shall bear wisdom in her voiceless bosom. Strength shall be with her like a conqueror's sword, and from her eyes the eternal's bliss shall gaze. A seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour, a branch of heaven transplant to human soil. Nature shall overleap her mortal step. Fate shall be changed by an unchanging will. This was her boon, and the Lord of life resumed his mighty rounds in the scant field of the ambiguous globe. Returning to earth with the splendid boon, he resumes his rounds on this doubtful earth. And then, in the second part of the epic, the poet describes how the seasons weave their dance. It is a requirement of the epic that the poet shall describe the various seasons. And in the first canto, the birth and childhood of the flame, he describes the seasons drew in linked significant dance, the symbol pageant of the changing year. First he describes the summer. Across the burning languor of the soil, paced summer with his pomp of violent noons, and stamped his tyranny of torrid light, and the blue seal of a great burnished sky. Then comes rainy season. Next, through its fiery swoon or clotted knot, rain tide burst in upon torn wings of heat. Startled with lightning's air's unquiet drowse, lashed with life-giving streams the torpid soil. Armies of revolution crossed the time field. The clouds' unending march besieged the world, and thunder drums announced the embattled gods. Earth was a quagmire, heaven a dismal block. None saw through dank, drenched weeks the dungeon sun. After the rainy season, Earth's mood now changed. She lay in lulled repose. The hours went by with slow, contented tread. A wide and tranquil air remembered peace. Earth was the comrade of a happy sun. A calmness neared as of the approach of God. A light of musing trance lit the soil and sky. 3 thoughtful seasons passed with shining tread, and scanning one by one the pregnant hours, watched for a flame that lurked in luminous depths. That is, they are waiting for the birth of Savitri, the vigil of some mighty birth to come. Autumn led in the glory of her moons, and dreamed in the splendor of her lotus pools, and winter and dew time laid their calm, cool hands on nature's bosom, still in half sleep. Then spring, an ardent lover, leaped through leaves and caught the earth bride in his eager clasp. His advent was a fire of irised hues. His arms were a circle of the arrival of joy. His voice was a call to the transcendent sphere, whose secret touch upon our mortal lives keeps ever new the thrill that made the world. All nature was at beauty's festival. The great moment arrives when there is a full spring, as if all nature is gathered at beauty's festival. In this high signal moment of the gods, answering earth's yearning and her cry for bliss, a greatness from our other countries came. A silence in the noise of earthly things immutably revealed the secret word. A lamp was lit, a sacred image made. The child is born. The mission child is protected by angels, and the child grows. As she grows, there is a growth in the consciousness around. The muse of poets, the meditations of the seers and sages, all these acquire a new intensity. She learns the arts and sciences that were taught to the best in those times, and she grows splendidly. All people feel attracted to her. They want to follow her. She becomes the leader. And as she grows, they follow. She walked in their front towards a greater light, their leader and queen over their hearts and souls. One close to their bosoms, yet divine and far. Admiring and amazed, they saw her stride, attempting with a godlike rush and leap, heights for their human stature too remote, or with a slow, great, minute-sided toil, pushing towards aims they hardly could conceive. There was such a gulf of consciousness, gulf of being, between the best of men and Savitri as she grew, that there was no companion. Only so men worship a God too great to know, too high, too vast to wear a limiting shape. They feel a presence and obey a might, adore a love whose rapture invades their breasts, a law they follow, greatening heart and life. Open to the breath is the new diviner air. Open to man is a freer and a happier world. And yet, none came near her. No equal heart came close to join her heart. No transient earthly love assailed her calm. No hero passion had the strength to seize. No eyes demanded her replying eyes. A power within her awed the imperfect flesh. So she remained alone, and one day, when the king, her father, was sitting quiet, he hears a voice from above. O force-compelled, fate-driven, earth-born race, O petty adventurers in an infinite world, and prisoners of a dwarf humanity, how long will you tread these circling tracks of mind around your little self and petty things? But not for a changeless littleness were you meant, not for vain repetition were you built. Out of the immortal substance you were made. The voice prods him to take some action for the release of man from his self-accepted limitations. And as the voice stops, Savitri step comes in, and he takes it as an answer. So he tells her that you have waited long, you have a destiny to fulfill. Find him with whom you have to work out the fate of man. He says, depart where love and destiny call your charm. Venture through the deep world to find thy mate. For somewhere on the longing breast of earth, thy unknown lover waits for thee, the unknown. Thy soul has strength and needs no other guide than one who burns within thy bosom spears. There shall draw near to meet thy approaching steps the second self for whom thy nature asks. He who shall walk until thy body's end, a close-bound traveller pacing with thy pace, who shall give voice to what is in thee mute. And she leaves the next day before the dawn is on. She has left. She goes in a carven wooden chariot drawn by horses. It is summer, and she passes through town and village, cities and forests, fields and brooks and rivers, stopping at night in the palaces of kings or in the hermitages of the sages, meeting none who answers to her call. And it is a destiny, carrying the destiny of man. The hooves of the horses are guided by the gods, and she goes on, meets the sages and talks to them, shares her experience. And one day, when she is passing through a forest, on the verge of a green forest, she sees a form. She was about to go, but there is an unknown factor, an unknown force made her look the other side, and she sees a human being, a form, on the edge of a forest. She looks. That person also turns to her. She holds the reins, stops the chariot. The man erect like the spear of a god. He comes, looks at her wonderingly, and she says, "O sunlight molded in the form of a maid, what is thy name?" Say, "I know that gods and goddesses frequent these forests. I vainly hope you are one amongst us. How art thou known among men?" She announces herself, I am Savitri, the daughter of the king of Madra." "And who art thou?" she asks him, interested. And, as men would always do, he breaks into a long peroration describing who he is, how he has been there from childhood, how the birds and the beasts and the plants, they have all been his companions, how he has heard all the sages and things chant, how he has grown. And she hears him. She asks him, "Tell more, speak more of thyself." And he speaks. And then she looks at him. He looks. The souls recognize each other. And the union is forged. Immediately she gets down from the chariot, picks up with the deft fingers a few flowers, weaves a garland, puts it on his throbbing bosom with her shaking hands, and bows down to him. And the ancient marriage is gone through once again between the Lord and his spouse. He leads her to the hermitage where his old, exiled, blind father and his wife live, father and mother live. And she tells him that she has got to go back, tell her father, and that she would come back. And she leaves. At this moment, Narada is a divine sage of music. He is a man who has reached the divine status. A human who has, by dint of his austerities, devotion, and one-pointed love for God, reached a divine status, accepted in the assemblies of the gods, and who is among the few 8 immortals who are ever present in the world, with a free access to the heavens, can move free in the spheres, who always goes round the world chanting the glory of God, reaching the blessings, the benedictions of God to those in need. So one day he is in a mood, this day he is in a mood to come down to earth. He leaves the paradise and he comes chanting, attracted by this golden summer earth that lay beneath him like a glowing bowl tilted upon the table of the gods. Our golden earth, when he comes down, looks like a glowing bowl tilted upon the table of the gods. He descends, and as he enters into the world of toil and quest and grief and hopes, there is an order in which he comes from the high paradise. He passed from the immortals' happy paths to a world of toil and quest and grief and hope, to these rooms of a seesaw game of death and life. Then there is a passage which traces half this earth has come to be. Says, across an intangible border of soul space, he passed from mind into material things. Amid the inventions of the inconscient self and the workings of a blind somnambulist force, below him circling burned the myriad suns. First he bore the ripples of the etheric sea. The highest, there is the ethereal ocean. Then a primal air brought first the joy of touch. A secret spirit drew its mighty breath, contracting and expanding this huge world. Aerial. The secret might of the creative fire displayed its triple power to build and form, its infinitesimal wave sparks weaving dance, its nebulous units grounding shape and mass, magic foundation and pattern of a world, its radiance bursting into the light of stars, the fire principle. He felt a sap of life, a sap of death, liquid, into solid matter's dense communion, plunging and its obscure oneness of forms, he shared with the dumb spirit identity. As he comes, he beheld the cosmic being at his task. He saw the eternal labor of the gods and looked upon the life of beasts and men. A change now fell upon the singer's mood. He came singing of the glory of God and the light that never wanes. But after seeing, entering into a zone of suffering and struggle, a rapture and a pathos moved his voice. He sang no more of light that never wanes, and oneness and pure everlasting bliss. He sang no more of the deathless heart of love. His chant was a hymn of ignorance and fate. And as he sings, he sang of the truth that cries from night's blind deeps, and the mother wisdom hid in nature's breast. He sang of the glory and marvel still to be born, of the Godhead throwing off at last its veil, of bodies made divine and life made bliss, and the transfiguration and the ecstasy. As Narad sang these glorious prospects, and as he sang, the demons wept with joy. Demons are the deviating, erring beings who are working against God. When this sage sings of the glory of God and the transformation for everyone, the demons wept with joy, foreseeing the end of the long, dreadful task and the defeat for which they hoped in vain, and glad release from their self-chosen doom, and return into the one from whom they came. The profound idea is, even the devil, even the demons, even the adversaries, they serve a purpose. They are the fallen gods, and the demons, though they are working against God, in their heart of hearts, they are praying for the victory of God, because only so will their mission be destroyed and they be delivered into the one. So as Narad sings, they weep with joy at the prospect of their deliverance. And as he descends, he looked out from the luminous cloud, and strangely limped his face a beautiful mask of antique joy. He is an ancient man who knows no death. He has lived long, for centuries, and lived in the bliss of God. So his face is a mask of antique joy, an old, sempiternal bliss. And he finds the palace of the king, Ashwapati king, rising to the winds. And as it descends, he finds himself in the full court where the assembly has met. Get up, receiving him, welcome him, and he sings of the glory. And just at that time comes Savitri. Her radiant tread glimmered across the floor, a happy wonder in her fathomless gaze. Changed by the halo of her love she came, her eyes rich with the shining mist of joy, as one who comes from a heavenly embassy, discharging the proud mission of her heart, one carrying the sanction of the gods to her love and its luminous eternity. Then the sage looks at her. He flung on her his vast immortal look. His inner gaze surrounded her with its light, and raining back knowledge from his immortal lips, he cried to her, "Who is this that comes, the bride, the flame-born, and round her illumined head, pouring their lights, her hymeneal pomps move flashing about her?" He answered,